For many Detroit Lions fans, they have had a whole bunch of hopes, dreams, and dare I say prayers that Brad Holmes would make a trade for a superstar edge rusher. But a big bucket of cold water just got doused on those dreams, and it's not at all pleasant news. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So, I'm going to say this right now, folks. Again, it gives me no pleasure talking about this topic because I'm going to tell you this right now. Again, when it comes to this conversation about trading for an edge rusher, I have tried to maintain a very, very thin line of yes, I would like it, but at the same time, I don't think it's very reasonable. I don't think it's very likely to happen. And I know for a lot of Lions fans, that is not something they've necessarily wanted to hear. But again, one thing I try to do on my channel is I always try to tell it like it is. I always try to tell the truth, and I always maintain the utmost of professionalism when it is I'm giving you guys an opinion. Now, why am I saying that? Well, the reason why I'm saying that is because news came out today that there's very little chance that the Lions are most likely going to be able to make a trade for a superstar edge rusher. And the reason I'm saying that is because there were tweets that were pushed out from both the Browns and also from the Raiders that pretty much stated that, yeah, chances are it's not likely to happen. What am I talking about? Well, with the Browns tweet, it was pushed out that the Browns GM, whose name is escaping me at the moment, but I'm going to put the tweet up anyway. Pretty much the Browns GM said this. He's like, listen, despite the fact that Myles Garrett said he wanted a trade, despite the fact he said he wants to go, we have remained adamant. We are steadfast in our position that we are not trading Myles Garrett. And here's the reason why this statement is a huge bit of bad news for Lions fans. The reason why is this. If you're going to try and make a trade for a player of Myles Garrett's caliber, it's most likely going to be done at one of two spots. It's going to be done either before the draft or it's going to be done during the draft. Now, I'm not saying that Brad Holmes might not still try to make the trade happen if he is so inclined. But here's the thing. This is now the second time that the Browns have come out and specifically stated, we are not trading Myles Garrett. And again, the reason I believe they're doing this is because they believe steadfastly that so long as they fix whatever the problem is that Myles Garrett has, that they will be able to bring him back to the table. Excuse me. And I again think the biggest problem that Myles Garrett has is that there's no star quarterback to ensure that, hey, we actually have a shot of winning. Because, well, let's call it for what it is. Deshaun Watson's not going to lead the Browns to victory. It's just not going to happen. The guy has already suffered 2 Achilles tear injuries to the exact same Achilles in the exact same year. Plus, on top of that, before the Achilles injury, Watson was not playing well at all. So it's like, listen, there's a legitimate reason why, obviously, Garrett wants out. He wants to go somewhere where he can win. And it's obvious in his opinion that the Browns are not close to winning. But again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Even if Myles Garrett wants to get traded, even if Brad Holmes wants to trade for him, it takes 2 to tango. Brad Holmes could offer a damn king's ransom to the Browns to get Garrett. If the guy on the other end's not willing to listen, it doesn't matter what the hell, Brad Holmes offers him. It's just not going to happen. And so when you take a look at this tweet, it once again pretty much puts a huge wet blanket, it throws a huge pot of cold water on the whole notion and idea that it's not likely to happen because you have to think about it from Brad Holmes' perspective. With, the draft literally coming up, and it's coming up fast. Like, we're already at the end of February. The draft is at the beginning of April. Brad Holmes can't be spending all this time contemplating whether or not he's going to trade draft resources to potentially go and get Myles Garrett, when at the same time, he's also taking a look at these draft prospects. So I honestly think this, for Brad Holmes, I think that for him, it's like, listen, even if he wanted to trade for Myles Garrett, he's got to look at it from a realistic perspective here. He can't be waiting around constantly thinking, well, maybe if I just do this, maybe if I just do that, maybe the Browns will be willing to talk. I think at this point, that boat has sailed. I think Brad Holmes, as we heard from the press conference, he's already in draft mode. He's already like, listen, I'm not thinking about trading. I'm not thinking about, all that nonsense. It's pretty much, okay, I'm in draft mode and I'm in free agent mode. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what free agents are most likely going to be available? Who can I potentially sign? But before he even has that thought process and that conversation, he's also got to figure out how to get guys that are already on the roster signed and kept on the roster that they want to keep. Because Brad Holmes himself said, he's like, listen, there are guys that are on this roster that we're going to have to make some tough choices on. And those are the guys that they like, they are good, but are they good enough to invest money in versus other guys that are even better? So when it comes to the whole conversation about Myles Garrett, that is putting a cold water conversation on. It's dousing it. It's making it more and more difficult, more impossible that, the Lions are not going to be are not going to have a chance to get him. And the same is true with the Raiders. The Raiders also pushed out a tweet. Now, granted, they didn't say about anything about, how we're not interested in trading, Max Crosby. There's no way we're trading him. Rather, they said something that was of a more positive note on the conversation, but it still has negative connotations towards this conversation and idea that Lions fans have. What the Raiders said, and again, I'll put the tweet up, is that they are expecting that Max Crosby is going to be a Raider for a long time. And again, you have to think about it from the perspective with the Raiders. I'll say this right now. The Raiders actually made a really smart move by bringing in Pete Carroll. Why? Because Pete Carroll is not only, one, a respected coach around the NFL, highly respected, one of the most highly respected coaches there is, but this is a guy who is a defensive-minded coach that is also highly respected, but also has a Super Bowl win and has been to Super Bowls. If you think about it for Max Crosby, he's not really had that in a head coach for a guy that can say, yes, as a head coach, I won a Super Bowl. I'm also a defensive-minded guy. I'm also highly respected around the league for my acumen, for my understanding of the game. So for Max Crosby, that's already a big draw for him. Realistically, the only thing the Raiders need to fix at this point to at least give the appearance that they can actually contend, they can actually, go out and try and prove something, is they just got to find a quarterback. Because offensively, they've already got a good tight end. They've already got a good wide receiver. If you get a good quarterback, okay, you're already in the driver's seat for a lot of the stuff. Because it's not like the Raiders were super, super terrible last year. It's not like they were the Titans. It's not like they were the Browns or anything like that. They actually have some pieces already there. They just need to find something to build around to then make it like, okay, we're actually moving in the right direction. So trying to think about Max Crosby wanting to be traded is even less likely than the whole idea with Myles Garrett because of two main reasons. Number one, Max Crosby has not officially stated he wants a trade. At best, he has kind of danced around the bush. He's kind of tipped his toe in the water. He's made some comments where it's like, hey, maybe, to an outsider perspective, maybe he might want to get traded. Maybe he's dissatisfied with being a Raider. Maybe he wants to be traded. And I know for Lions fans, it would be absolutely stupendous. It would be wonderful. It would be a dream come true if you could get a guy who went to Eastern Michigan and to pair him opposite of freaking Aiden Hutchinson. Because now you'd have two of the best edge rushers in the NFL. They both have ties to Michigan. and now you'd have them on your team. But when it comes to Max Crosby, I just don't think it's possible because, one, Crosby has never officially stated he wants to get traded. And for Crosby, the Raiders are in a much better position. They're in a much better overall roster status and roster build than the Browns are. So for me, it's like, okay, you just got told by the Browns GM, we're not trading him. We're not trading Myles Garrett. And it's not the first time, it's the second time they brought it up. The draft is coming right around the corner. The free agent market is getting set to start here very, very soon. So it's like, listen, when you've got all of these things that are literally about to hit, boom, 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 it's like, listen, if you were actually wanting to make a trade for a player of such high status, like a Myles Garrett, like a Max Crosby, or, one of the Watt brothers or something like that, I would say this right now, that boat is getting really close to sailing. But for me, I'm looking at it from the perspective of Brad Holmes, and it's like, listen, unless the trade was just way too damn good to pass up, I don't see Brad Holmes making a bid. I don't see Brad Holmes jumping in and saying, yes, I want to try and acquire one of these two guys. Because it's like, listen, you have to figure out what your draft strategy is. You have to figure out what it is you're going to do come draft night. You have to figure out what you're going to do with your picks. You can't be, trying to figure that out while at the same time still trying to figure out how to trade for guys like Crosby or Myles Garrett. And then on top of that, even if you weren't even thinking about that, you still got to figure out the cap situation. Yes, the Lions are going to get more cap space because the cap numbers have elevated a little bit. But it's like, listen, even if you still have that conversation, you would also have to keep and bear in mind, okay, we still have guys like Carlton Davis we're going to try and re-sign. We still have guys like Aiden Hutchinson we're wanting to extend. We have guys like Jameson Williams who we're trying to extend. Kirby Joseph who we're trying to extend. You have to pay them too. So it's just like, listen, due to the proximity of all of these events that are getting set to come up, due to the fact that the Browns are not interested in trading for Myles Garrett, I'm going to be honest, I would not at all be surprised if the Browns go through a very similar situation they did with Deshaun Watson. And that is, Myles Garrett does not get traded. The Browns are not going to trade him. So Myles Garrett decides he's just going to sit out. He would much rather, I think, sit out and then, lose a year in football rather than continue to play for the Browns, because I don't see the Browns being able to do anything that's going to turn his mind to thinking that team's ready to compete. And then, like I said, with the Raiders, Max Crosby has not stated he wants to get traded, number one. But also, number two, the Raiders are in a better, overall spot as far as where their roster is at. Plus, on top of that, the Raiders actually have a respected coach who's won a Super Bowl, who's been to Super Bowls. And on top of that, it seems like the Raiders, they just need to get a good quarterback to really get the ball rolling. So for me, as much as I understand the allure. I understand the attraction. I understand everything about what Lions fans would love about making a big-time trade acquisition for a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby. But at this point, folks, I think we seriously have to just call that idea, that dream, just a dead idea, a dead dream. It's not going to happen. I don't see Brad Holmes, with all this stuff that's getting set to come up, willing to all of a sudden completely deter his strategy of getting ready for free agency in the draft to make a huge acquisition like, a Myles Garrett or like a freaking, Max Crosby. I'll be honest with you. I 100% expect that what Brad Holmes is going to do, I think he's going to double dip. I think he's going to find a free agent edge rusher like a Josh Sweat, like a Joey Bosa. He's going to bring them in, and then he's probably going to go into the draft and he's going to get another one. That's what I think he's probably going to do. That's, I think, the most likely, most smart avenue that makes sense, because it fits exactly what the Lions are used to doing. They're used to making smart, good roster decisions based upon what reality is telling them. And at this point, reality is telling them, listen, you're not getting a Myles Garrett. You're not getting a Max Crosby. It's just not going to happen. So it's like, okay, I can't get them. Well, Josh Sweat is most likely going to be on the free agent market. He's most likely going to want to go to a team that can compete and can win. He just won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, so there's a good chance the Lions could nab him. There's a good conversation piece about how the Chargers are probably looking to cut Joey Bosa. We could probably get him, bring him in on a vet minimum deal or a somewhat close to vet minimum deal. And then again, there might be other guys that become available as we get closer to free agency. And then again, this edge rushing class is loaded with talent. That's exactly what I think the Lions are going to do. That's exactly what I think Brad Holmes is getting set to do. So as much as I understand this is not welcome news, it's unpleasant news for the Detroit Lions fandom, I think it's just the simple reality that we're going to have to accept for those that are absolutely dead set on getting a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby. I just don't think it's going to happen. Because again, like Brad Holmes said, you're not likely to get a guy like a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby traded because they're so rare. And to even think about trying to trade for one of them, you're going to have to give up a massive amount of draft resources and capital to try and acquire it. And most teams are not willing to do that because it is such an expensive business trying to get a good edge rusher. And like, Brad Holmes said today, he's like, listen, everybody wants to have multiple good pass rushers. But how do you actually make it in terms of maintaining the roster integrity, maintaining the composition of the roster for it to still be competitive? So, again, I'm sorry about the news. I know it's not what fans want to hear. But again, I've never shied away from telling the truth. I ain't starting now. But having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Share anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. And with that, I hope, whether this is the first time you're watching me or you guys have been watching me forever and a day, I hope that you guys actually got something out of the content and that you enjoyed the content. Also hope that everybody out there has something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.